So listen, I would like to welcome everybody. I'm going to even adjust this a little bit here so you see me.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. I'd like to welcome everybody to today's Facebook Live, or you might be watching us on Zoom, presentation. I apologize. I am clearly not cut out to be an IT person, and we were just having some technical problems getting everything to stream. So again, thank you so much for staying on with us and or coming back. So today's presentation is titled Helping Your Anxious Child or Teen Dealing with the COVID-19 Pandemic. And here at Warren Township Youth and Family Services, we are still open. We are still working with lots of youth in the community, many of our existing clients, taking on some new clients. And clearly, some children are really adapting well and managing this along with their families, but still the most common call we will get will be around a child struggling with lots of worrying thoughts and anxiety. So we're really excited to have the speaker today. Her name is Alison Koehler. She has been practicing for, I believe, around 25 years, a long time. She is in Gurnee. She works here in Gurnee. We have worked with Alison for many, many years. She has provided for us or facilitated for us our groups called Parenting the Anxious Child. And that has always been one of our most popular groups. And it provides over 3 meetings, a lot of framework and practical information for parents on anxiety. However, today's discussion, to frame this correctly, is it will be very much about this unique period of time that we are going through. We were going to COVID-19. So I don't want to take too much more time. We'll go ahead and in a moment we'll just get started. Just to let you know, we do have an hour set aside for this, but we'll just go naturally however long it is. Feel free to send us questions. I'm going to actually try to bring up Facebook so I can see any of the questions that might come up. So we'll begin our discussion now. So I'd like to again welcome Alison. And Alison, just say hi to everybody and make sure we're hearing you okay.
Hi, everybody.
Great, wonderful. We got you. Your sound's great. Okay, so Alison, I'd like to begin just by asking you the really general question. Just tell us a little bit about what you're seeing going on in your practice and the observations that you might have in terms of the issues regarding worrying and anxiety among children.
So, well, first, Adam, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk to people about this. This is, a life-changing thing that's happening out here in our world and in our society. It not only affects us as adults, but it affects our children and everyone around us. And so what I'm seeing a lot of is, I see a lot of parents actually who are coming, talking to me remotely, because this is how I am now doing all of my sessions for the obvious reasons. And the majority of the parents are letting me know that they're seeing not only their own anxieties creeping up, but the anxieties of their children. And in particular, kids about 12 and under, mostly 10 and under, they're seeing a lot more outbursts. We're seeing a lot more tantrums, a lot more neediness, some separation anxiety that's occurring, which is natural, of course. And I would think that the outbursts are because, right now we're all limited and quarantined. So there's very little that we can do and very little that they can do. The older kids, the adolescents and teens, what can you say about teens? They don't want to be home as it is. And they are very frustrated and feeling, I'm sure, very saddened by what they are missing, not just their friends, but their activities, their athletics. For those who are in high school, older high schoolers, prom, graduation. I know my son is a senior and we don't know what's happening with graduation. So that in and of itself is disappointing. So I think we're dealing with a lot of disappointment. We're dealing with a lot of sadness. We're dealing with a lot of angst, both from the kids' point of view and from the parents' point of view.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of that, the same here at the township. You and I were talking earlier, and you had mentioned, you had actually, I thought was a really interesting thing. You had used the word grief, I think, with me, because what you're getting at is part of what the kids are having a difficult time coping with
Mhm.
is the absence of those things that they were anticipating. And in some cases, these are major life events for a teen. They may act like they don't care, but graduation, prom, all that stuff, that has so much meaning.
Right. It absolutely does. And I would caution parents on having their kids, when their kids say to them, "Oh, I'm so happy I'm not in school. I don't miss school at all. Oh, I'm so happy I get to sleep late. E-learning is dumb." All of that. In essence, they may be actually feeling that, of course, but there is something that they're missing. And I think that they experience it just very differently than I think we give them credit for. Uh, the grief part is very significant, I believe. Um, and I'll actually just go into that part of it first, I think. And then we can kind of talk a little bit more about anxiety. But this grief part, I think that we're looking at is, um, understanding that our world is changing. Our world has forever changed at this point. And it reminds me a lot of 9/11. When 9/11 occurred, um, we never thought that anything like that could ever occur over here. We never thought that our world would be changing as drastically as it has. Before that time, we could go to the gates at the airport, not worry about security too much, not have a fear of anything happening on a plane. And now our world has changed, and we are now adapt to the security measures that we have to take. We no longer go to the gates. So we just sort of adapted to that, but it took a little time. And we were all sort of stunned as to what had happened. And whether or not we realize it, we went through those stages of grief. We went through the denial, the anger, the sadness, the bargaining, and the acceptance stage. And that is where I believe we are going to have to be dealing with at this point with COVID, and how we are able to process how we process that information, how we move on with our lives. We're looking at, from the denial standpoint, it's virus won't get us. When we first started hearing about it in December, I believe, even January, it was way out in China. Who knew anything about that? Never come over here. It only happens out there. And then we have the anger. Are you kidding me? Now I'm stuck in the house. You're telling me I can't go outside. You're telling me I can't go to the park. I can't do this. I can't do that. And then we have the bargaining, where we heard we're going to do 2 weeks quarantine. Well, okay, I'll do the 2 weeks, and after 2 weeks, it'll be okay, right? We'll be all right. And then the sadness of, is this ever going to end? What's going to happen? And then the acceptance part is, all right, this is happening. I now have to find ways to move forward. And what can I do to make it better? And we all know what that is, of course. And we'll just reiterate that here is washing hands, social distancing, don't touch your face, and making sure that you're not gathering in large groups. Don't go out if you don't have to. Basically, stay home. So that in of itself is grief oriented, because our freedoms have been taken from us unwillingly. And I don't mean to sound so dramatic about it, but that's in essence what's happened. So from a kid standpoint, you can certainly see how their world would be collapsing. From an adult standpoint, it's, okay, how do we deal with this? We've seen this in our lifetime. Again, I go back to 9/11. We've seen that in our lifetime. We've never seen a pandemic in our lifetime, but we've experienced things that have caused us to feel unsafe and insecure. And that is how our kids feel. That is how our kids deal with anxiety. And grief is going to be a natural part of this. So I think that is a fairly good segue, if I may, into anxiety a little bit, and exactly what that is and what people experience in anxiety. anxiety is really a natural thing, a natural response to stress. Anxiety is a natural response to what is going on around us that we feel we have no control over. And some anxiety is good, right? Some anxiety is, very wonderful to have. It motivates us to do well on a test, do well in our jobs, motivates us to do well in athletics. That kind of anxiety is good. You get the butterflies. Like, for example, to be honest, I think I mentioned this to you. I was a little anxious coming on here and doing this. I've never done something like this before. I was a little bit nervous, but it motivates you. On the other hand, anxiety is also something that we have to understand as being very fear-based. And the fear is based on what the consequences are. And those consequences are the unknown or the what ifs. That makes us scared. That makes anybody nervous. For a child, for a teen, they don't have control as it is in their lives that they feel. So to feel a loss of control in that way creates even more anxiety in them, creates even more worry. It becomes a disorder when it becomes problematic in their lives, when it begins to affect their daily life. So we're talking about two very different things of two very different ways of anxiety to be experienced. One is in terms of a disorder, where it has affected our lives, where it affects them, where they can't function in their lives, and they struggle in doing basic daily activities, versus what's going on right now that we're seeing with many kids, which is, hey, I'm a little scared. I don't know what this is. What if I get sick? What if I can't play with my friends? Why can't I play with my friends? What does that mean I'm a carrier or they may be a carrier? So those are the normal anxieties that we have and that a child would have. But when you have a child who has already significant diagnosis of or significant anxiety and has been diagnosed with having anxiety, those are a little bit more exacerbated, and we have to be concerned about that. And I would encourage that if your child is already seeing a therapist or has a mental health counselor, to continue those sessions, because you need that normalcy. They need to have that back and forth, that consistency, that safety, that security of knowing that that is at least still in their lives. In terms of what anxiety looks like in a child, I think many parents, I'm sure, are seeing outbursts and temper tantrums, some defiance, maybe a lot of defiance, crying, very clingy, having some difficulty sleeping, separation anxiety, as I mentioned earlier. That is the stuff that I'm seeing most of in my clients, and that I hear mostly from parents. I'm not hearing that many parents are seeing clear, visible signs. You're not going to see your child shaking, most likely. You're not going to see your child banging their head on the wall. And if you do see those things, and that is an unusual response that your child has, then yes, you do need to seek help. I think that for the most part, the COVID-19 brings out natural responses to stress. And I think parents are going to see a lot more stomach aches, headaches, and even they may even go so far as to say, well, I think I'm sick. I might have a cough. Do I have that? I'm having trouble breathing. Are they really having trouble breathing, or is it just them panicking? And you have to leave it up to the parents, as they know their child best, to make sure that they're actually healthy and safe. A lot of parents, I know you out there, have young children who may be showing some signs and not able to verbalize what's going on, whether your child is very young and too young to understand how to verbalize what it is that's going on with them. If your child has other disorders, perhaps whether autism or any other kind of communication disorder, I would encourage a traffic light system. That being maybe red construction paper, yellow construction paper, and green construction paper. Red being I'm not feeling good, I have high anxiety, I'm overwhelmed, I'm feeling not right, I need help. And they can, show you the red construction paper or put it up on the outside of their room or however they want to do it, or on the refrigerator. Yellow meaning I'm not doing great, I'm kind of medium anxious, and green being I'm okay. And obviously, as a parent, you would know how to best explain that to your child who's young or having communication disorders. I think there's other issues to look at, is mainly how can parents help? This is what I am faced with a lot when I talk with my clients over Zoom like this. As a matter of fact, yesterday I had a client in particular who was very concerned about her 12-year-old girl who is struggling in communicating with her friends. I've had a lot of parents reach out in that way. There are kids, and I think you and I talked a little bit about this earlier, there are many kids who have a good social support system at school, and they don't have issues at all reaching out to their friends, Snapchatting, Instagram, FaceTiming, texting, whatever. They don't have a problem keeping that social contact. In fact, even kids who they normally socialize at school with, but they don't hang out with outside of school, they're even contacting those people. And I think that creates a sense of normalcy for them as well. The other end of the spectrum, however, are the kids who seem to do okay while in school. However, when they're outside of school, they seem to be more isolated. They seem to pull back more. And that is what I think many parents, such as this parent of a 12-year-old I have, has been seeing in her daughter in particular. And I think that is what I think we'll see more of, is that sense of isolation and feeling very out of the loop and feeling very much sad. And what if they don't get to be with their friends again? What if they don't remember their friends? What if their friends don't remember them? I'm better off just staying in my room. Nobody likes me anyway. And then they go down a spiral. So I really think it's very important for parents to be very keenly aware of how their kids are interacting with other kids, and if they are at all, remotely. We all have to do this at this point too. And while we as parents are doing that with our own family members and our own friends, I would encourage these parents to encourage your kids to do the same. It's hard to do that. But when you have a child who is not as social and doesn't feel as comfortable doing that while they're not in school, I would encourage that they talk to their child, talk to your son or daughter, find out what it is that they like about somebody in school. What is it that they have in common? What is it that makes you laugh about them? Connect with them on that level. Connect with them so that they feel normal, at least, as they would say, to reach out to somebody else, another peer. As silly as it may sound, TikToks are a big thing. I know. My daughter does it all the time. So I know a lot of people out there do it. It's a popular thing. It's fun to do. But it's also a way for them to communicate and connect. So many kids out there like to dance, like music. I would encourage them to do that. So if your child is somebody who does not connect with people on a social basis outside of school remotely, perhaps doing that through TikTok may be a good idea.
One of the points I think you made that's really important is that we could make the mistake of assuming because a child is socially anxious that, well, maybe this child's going to be fine because they're not being put into a lot of social environments.
Hmm.
But in fact, socially anxious kids are often very lonely. And not every child. I mean, kids are different, but many kids are socially anxious, in fact, desperately want those attachments.
Right.
And the school environment at least provides a ready-made version. Even if they aren't the center of attention, they get to kind of be there, be part of the
Right.
crowd, engage. And so I really think one of the important populations for parents to be mindful of are those kids who are often socially anxious, maybe do fear the anxiety associated with social situations, but now they really have very few avenues. And what I hear you saying is, parents, you may need to kind of just gently get involved a little bit more, ask some questions, maybe even gently kind of coach them to reach out to somebody. I think you and I were talking earlier, and you said, even just to get them to just, I thought I love this. You said, send a picture of what they had for dinner last night, just
Right.
any connection.
Right. Right. Kids love going to Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks and, making giant ice cream creations.
Mhm.
And they're always taking pictures of food. And it's very funny to me. But I think that that is a great way to connect. And I think that even something as silly as that, people can relate to it. Kids can relate to food. Kids can relate to something that everybody does. Everybody loves doing silly things, taking pictures of silly things, even their dogs, their cats,
Yeah.
their animals. Um, and I think that that is a great way to connect. Uh, in particular, I think animals, to be honest. Um, and especially for that socially anxious kid, if you do have an animal um, and you find that they are very connected to that animal, that's a great thing for them to do, is to take pictures of that, of their pet, and send it over the airwaves
Mhm.
to their friends. It's important that they connect somehow. Um, this is a very isolative time.
Mhm.
And I think that we as adults are seeing that it's very possible that it could get even more isolative, at least for a short time. And that's something that we have to keep in mind, is that this is temporary.
Right.
And the fact that our normal, as I mentioned earlier, is no longer normal, it's not there anymore, it's going to have to be a new normal. So our new normal is forming, it's metamorphosizing at this point. And the best way for our new normal for our kids to understand and accept it is to do so through our families. Our families are the ones who we trust the most. Our families are the one who are going to help us create a new normal and to make us feel as though we can move forward and we'll be okay. So it's really critical that we understand that this is temporary, that we understand that this is not a forever thing. This we will actually be able to work through. It'll take some time, but we have to work through it, and we will. So those are things to keep in mind. It's about having perspective, and that actually leads to some important ways to help your child, help your kids, help your teens understand what's going on. First off, I think understanding, like I said, it's important to have a perspective. Keep things rational versus irrational. Is it rational to believe that you could contract the virus? Yes, it is. Is it irrational, though, to think that if you step outside, you're definitely going to get the virus? That's a little irrational. But it's rational to believe there is that possibility, but you have some control over this. And that's what anxiety is all about. Anxiety is all about control. You have some control over this. You know what you can do, we say to our kids. I tell my kids all the time, wash your hands. Don't touch your face. You can't see your friends. No, you have to have social distancing. No, you can't come to the store with me. So there's ways that we do have control. And that's something that kids need to feel. And when kids, and when I say kids, I mean all ages, when they feel out of control, there is fear, and understandably so. But it's important to, again, keep it in perspective, look and see what they do have control over. What we have control over is the present, is what is going on right now. We don't have control over what's going on in the future. We don't have control over what happened in the past. We have control now. So that's an important piece of it. I think there's other important pieces, right? There's changing their mindsets. Oh my God, I'm stuck in the house. Really? Oh, okay. Well, yeah, you're stuck in the house, but instead of looking at it that way, we could look at it a little bit differently. Okay, well, I guess I get to finally clean out that closet and drawer. But here's the positive about cleaning out that closet and drawer. I've outgrown those clothes. I can now go shopping online for new clothes. So there's a positive. I know it may sound minimal, but those things do help. The way in which you think about things matters. The way in which a parent presents something matters, especially in this day and age.
It's interesting as you're talking, it just reminds me how much anxiety and fear and suffering is connected to meaning.
Mm-hmm.
So part of what you're trying to do is you're trying to help the child understand, what do I have control over? What is the purpose and value of whatever actions we as a family or I as an individual are taking? So what I really hear you doing is you're saying, be honest and direct with the child about the risks, clarify with them the limitations, those things that they can do or be engaged in and not do. You're trying to reframe things in a really in as positive a way as possible. And frankly, some families have said to me, this is the most time we've spent together in
Right.
years. It's actually been very positive. And then you also, if I heard you correctly, you're also talking to parents about being really clear with the children about what are the protocols. In other words, what are the things we are doing to keep you safe, and what are the things that you need to do to keep yourself safe?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think if I could just outline something here, Adam, and I think could be very helpful for parents to hear. There's several steps here, and I apologize. I'm sort of looking at some notes here I jotted down. So bear with me here, and want to make sure I don't forget things. So there are things that are important. One, I want you to normalize the anxiety. Don't minimize it. What I mean by that is, let them know that when they have some anxiety coming out, let them know, okay, we get it. I get that you're anxious. I see that, and it's okay. Validate how they feel. Validation is a big key point here, because if you have a child that says to you, I'm very scared about this. I don't know if I really want to go outside. What if grandma gets sick? What if you get sick? And they go into the what if land, which we all do. You have to normalize that. You have to be able to say to them, okay, I understand how you're feeling. I see that you're scared. I'm scared too. So we're all uncertain about what's happening here, and it's okay. And we're going to get through this. If you, however, are saying to your child, don't be ridiculous. How could you possibly think that? Nothing's going to happen. We don't know anybody. It's not near us. It hasn't touched Gurney, Illinois, which isn't true. We don't know anybody. Therefore, it's not going to happen to us. If you invalidate them, you make them feel foolish. You make them feel ridiculous. You make them feel bad about themselves. Now they're anxious about how they feel about themselves. Now they're wondering, what did I do? How can I think that way? Or they may actually go the opposite direction, which is, oh, I'm fine. Let's go hang out with Johnny at the park and have a big party. And we don't want to do that. We want to normalize their anxiety, normalize their concerns, and validate them. The other thing is, like I mentioned before, change their mindset. There's lots of things to do, right? Redecorate your room, learn how to paint, learn how to sketch, learn about how to change a tire or change your oil. It's a really good thing to learn, by the way. Play those old video games that you used to play. You know, play some board games. Go play catch with your younger brother, even though he annoys you. Go play something with your younger sister, even though she frustrates you. But you have that time. And for the older kids in particular, and as difficult as it is for seniors to deal with at this point, there's some exciting times ahead of them, whether it's college or going to get a job or doing whatever. Make a list of what you want to take with you. Do you want a list for a new apartment? What you can get, a list to take to school with you? Look online, busy yourself. Make sure that you are doing something to put yourself in a better frame of mind. The next thing is, I would encourage that you let your kids feel their feelings. Sounds kind of silly, but what I mean by that is, if they're feeling sad, let them feel sad. I know it's really hard to let your kids feel sad. It's really hard to let them feel angry and anxious. And all you want to do is hug them and say it's going to be okay. But I want you to let them feel that way, because it's the only way for them to move through it and move through it quickly. If we prevent them from feeling that way, if we say, stop feeling like that, they're only going to hold it in even more. And we don't want that. It's okay to feel this way. This is high anxiety times. So let them feel like that. One thing that you can do that I've had parents do before for younger kids is create a worry box. So we don't want our kids dwelling on this for long periods of time. You know, we don't want them to think about it all the time. So I would encourage that you have your kids write down what they're thinking and feeling, whatever it is that they're fearful of. Put it in a box, and then set aside a time each day or each night. Open up the box and look and see what it is they're worried about, and say, hey, I see that you're worried about this. Are you still worried about that? Do you want to talk about that? Because this is our time to talk about that. And you set aside a specific amount of time. And when that time is done, and when you're done talking about that issue, you close the worry box and you move on to the next day. Set aside the time. The next thing is, and this is a big one, create a schedule, create a routine. Kids are all about routine. So I would highly encourage, and it's easier to do now with e-learning, I guess, because they have to be online for a certain period of time and do what they need to do. But even for the younger kids, I would definitely encourage a routine. Create the time that they get up. They get up at 7:30 or whatever it is, breakfast, snack, learning time, reading time, play time, lunch, nap time if they take naps. And if you have children that still take naps, you're very fortunate. And schedule those times to do things. Most importantly, schedule time that they have virtual play dates, or they have time on their phones, on their screens, connecting with other people, connecting in ways that we typically would have said, put the screens away, get off FaceTime, stop tweeting, stop snapping. But now it's more important, more than ever, that they do that, but not excessively. We have to still monitor that. But keeping a routine is helpful, because that creates normalcy. That creates a sense of belonging, a sense that they're secure, and a sense that they do not need to be anxious about the unknown. The other thing is, I would say, slow down. Slow down. We got time now. As much as we don't want that time sometimes, we now have that. So take the time to let them decompress. I know when my kids have come home from school, there's a lot going on in their heads. They've had a lot going on in the 8 hours that they were gone, and a lot of information filling their heads. It's overwhelming. So they have very, very busy lives. Right now, they're not so busy, but it's not a bad thing. Maybe they get to actually stop and smell the roses a little bit. That's a good thing. Point out things that are important in their lives, in your lives, family, health, nature, things that we normally would not look at or give a second thought. These things are important. So slow down a little bit and know that that's okay. I talked about giving perspective. That was an important one. This is a big one. Do not watch the news all the time. Don't have it on. Don't have it on in the background for background noise. Don't sit and talk to your kids about it all the time. Kids have their iPhones. They're always checking their phones. I would encourage you to encourage your kids. Do not look at the news. Don't turn off those news notifications on your phones. We don't need those. If you want to know about what's going on, pick a reliable source that you believe in. Pick a time when you're going to listen to it. Pick a time when you want to talk to your kids about it. Encourage your teens to sit and watch with you even, but limit that exposure. There's only so much of that we can take. We don't need to know about everything. We don't need to know about all the deaths. We don't need to know about all the new tests. We don't need to know every single thing all of the time the moment it comes out. These things are important, and I'm not negating that, but the exposure to our kids becomes overwhelming and creates a lot of anxiety, and we want to limit that. That anxiety also is put on us, and we have to manage that too, which I'll get to in a moment. The other thing that would be very helpful is learning about mindfulness. You and I talked earlier today, Adam, about how anxiety is a very much of a physiological response to stress. And there's no doubt. We have headaches, stomach aches, our hearts race, we have trouble breathing. Some people get tingly. Some people feel very heavy in their shoulders, in their backs. Some even just feel very lethargic. So that physiological response to anxiety, to stress, is very hormonal too. So exercise, meditation, mindfulness, practicing these things will only help. Encourage your child to do this. Encourage your kids to learn about these things. I know many, many kids out there look at things and kind of look at meditation or yoga and, oh my gosh, I'm not doing that. That's not for me. I'm not doing anything like that. It might be. It might be something for them to learn. It might be something to encourage them to look into. But mindfulness is something that people can practice very easily. And I highly encourage not just all of my clients, but everybody out there to do some form of mindfulness daily. And whether we realize it or not, we actually do that. So there are times when you take that nice deep breath and you suddenly feel like a little bit more relaxed. That is actually some form of mindfulness. Paying attention to how you breathe. So there's a couple tricks here, a couple strategies I'd like to say that I'd like to share, but I'm going to take a little sip here first. Okay. First, I would say belly breathing. Belly breathing, if you kind of think of a toddler with the belly, and you always see their belly breathing, right? Their belly goes in and out. As adults, we don't do that. As adults, we breathe through usually our upper chest, right? Through our shoulders. But if you are able to belly breathe, you'll find yourself slowing down a little bit. And what that means is you have one hand on your stomach, one hand on your chest, and you breathe through your stomach. So you inflate as you take a breath in and your stomach inflates. And then as you breathe out, your stomach deflates. And you want to do that very slowly. So you breathe in through your nose and breathe out through your mouth. Kids love doing this, little kids in particular. And a great way to help them is have them lay on the floor, have them get their best stuffed animal that they love the most, put it on top of their belly, and say, okay, Mr. Piggy is going to be breathing with you. Let's see how Mr. Piggy can do this with you. And you put Mr. Piggy on top of their belly, and you say, okay, let's make Mr. Piggy go up in the air like a balloon. And now let Mr. Piggy fall down to the floor. Let's put Mr. Piggy up in the air and down to the floor. And that actually works. And you have to do it very rhythmically, count to like 3 or 4 with little kids, and you'll see them calming down. Another way is triangle breathing. This is one that I'm definitely a fan of. It's breathing in through your nose, about 5 to 7 seconds, holding it for about 5 to 7 seconds, and then exhaling gently through your mouth, 5 to 7 seconds. Then breathe normally for a little bit, and then do that again. That slows your heart rate down. That slows everything down in you enough that you can gain a little perspective. Anytime you are anxious or your child is anxious, they cannot function the way you want them to. You can't function the way you want to. The only way to do that is by physically calming down. As we talked about a moment ago, it's all very physiological. So we have to take care of those responses first. Another way to be mindful is sit comfortably, have your teen sit comfortably, hands on your legs, close your eyes, take a couple deep breaths in, focus on one finger. I know it sounds kind of goofy. That's okay. Focus on one finger. And as you focus on that one finger, you may feel a little energy, a little tingling in that one finger. That's exactly what should be happening. Just focus all your mind on that one thing. And you do it for about a minute. And that minute actually is a very long minute. But if you can help your child do that, if you can help your teen do that and keep them focused, and even if their mind gets a little distracted, encourage them to bring their thoughts right back to that, where it's only focusing on the present, focusing only on what's important, which is that one finger at that moment, they'll start to relax. Mindfulness is all about being in the present. It's all about being very thoughtful, being very mindful of what it is that's in front of you right now. And that's why we hear so much about people focusing on their breath, because that's all that people have real control over, right? At that moment is how they're breathing. So that's a lot about why mindfulness works so well, because it is so calming. But mindfulness is also something like when you stare off into space and you stare at that spot on the wall for a moment and you calm yourself down. That's actually mindfulness. Another piece of mindfulness is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5 things you see, 5 things you hear, 5 things you feel. And not feel like I feel sad, but physically feel like I feel my hand on my leg, I feel my shirt on my shoulder, that kind of thing. And when you find 5 things, you do 4 things, and then 3 things, 2 and 1. And that actually brings your blood pressure down. It distracts you. It calms you down. This is a great tool to use, not just for yourself, but for your kids. So when you have your child coming to you and they're very anxious about what's going on in the world right now, and they're very scared, or they've heard a story about their teacher who gets COVID-19, or they've heard about their friend's parent who's in the hospital, and now they're getting upset, and now they're getting very anxious about you or about grandma or grandpa. This is a great exercise for you to do with them, because you can't talk logically to calm them down unless they're physically able to be calm. So there's those tricks.
I just want to jump in for a second and mention something really quick. Just for parents to, and I think most parents know this, that if you Google, of course, mindfulness, there are some wonderful apps and tons of podcasts. There's also a lot of videos out there, not just of mindfulness, but also of movements, particularly for younger children, different kids yoga and other formats, ways for to have your children actually move along with breathing that are incredibly effective. And they're fun to do. And I think you hit on this, Allison. The other piece of it is you got to be doing it also.
Right, right, absolutely. And this is a great segue I was going to jump into is managing your own anxieties. It is the way to help your child the best, the way to help your teen through this anxious time in our lives is to manage your own anxieties. It's very hard to do. It's very challenging. And it is something that you often may feel as though you can't do, but I'm telling you, you can. So I would encourage that you structure yourself before you talk to your child. If you are anxious and you're trying to calm your anxious child down, that's not going to work. You have to manage your own anxieties. And what that means is taking care of yourself. What that means is being good to yourself, making sure that you understand how you're feeling and what you're feeling. Ask for support, reach out, whether it's to your best friend or your spouse or your siblings or your parents or to your therapist, whatever it might be. Reach out for help if you need to, but manage your own anxieties. Be level-headed. Be realistic about what it is that you can control and what you can't control. Keep in mind what's rational for you to believe in and what's irrational for you to think. You also don't want to get sucked into social media. That's a great thing to get sucked into. It's like a parasite, right? It sort of just sucks you in and just grabs on and holds on to you for a long time. And you can't help but read through Facebook all the time or read all the Twitter comments. I would encourage that you are careful with that because that will create even further angst. That level of anxiety will continue to rise. You can't help your child if you can't help yourself. And the best example or analogy I can give that I give every single one of my clients, it is just like being on an airplane. And when those oxygen masks come down, you are to put your own oxygen mask on first before helping another. Because if you can't put your own on, you cannot help somebody else. I would also focus on whatever it is that you're doing right now to reduce the risk of infecting anybody else. You have the ability and the control, and so do your kids. They have a lot more control than they think. Follow the guidelines that have been out there. So when your kids are feeling like they don't know what to do, this is what they can do. Oh, another good point, actually, somebody else asked me about this, is how to keep your child busy in these times, not just with crafts and things like that, but there are a lot of kids out there who like to do things for others, who want to be helpful and they're feeling helpless. I would encourage that you have your kids go through your pantry and find things to give to the local food pantry. Donate items, go through their clothing, donate items. They have control over that. I would say whatever books they may have, kids are stuck at home. You know, they're bored. Find some books that you no longer read, donate them. Do whatever you can to give to another person. In addition, we have a lot of elderly people who are in assisted living places, who are living alone, who are in nursing homes. They can't have anybody come visit them. I would encourage that you send some letters, draw some pictures. The kids can do that. It'll make them feel really great. Maybe even call these places up and find out first names of people so that they can attach a first name to a picture or to a letter. This is important because, like kids, they're out there and they're isolated. Right. But this could bring a child and an elderly person together and make them feel as though they're not alone, because we're not alone. And that's something really important to point out to the kids is we're not alone in this. We're all dealing with this. We're here for each other. And as a community, and when I say community, I mean collectively, not just in Gurnee, Illinois, but as a community of people, we're going to get through this. And it's important that we keep that in mind.
You know, you bring up a really important point, which is that people who worry a lot, and particularly if that turns into particularly a lot of anxious thoughts, is that one of the characteristics is that person is often too much in their head.
Right.
And that's why often one of the prescribed actions for somebody might be to do something to get outside of themselves
Mm-hmm.
and to go into the essential, through compassion, through empathy, into the experience of others. Now, that in of itself can be anxiety producing also, but very often people in a time like this, particularly if they're sitting in the room, they're just kind of caught up in their own thoughts and just ruminating.
Right.
So I
Right.
really love that idea about getting kids to reach out in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it does create perspective because that does help the child realize that I'm in a tough situation, as so are many, but there are many who are in much more difficult situations.
Right. Right. Absolutely. We hear a lot about people volunteering to make masks. These are things that, these kids can help do too. Um, I'm not talking about putting them in a factory and working like they did back in World War II, but we're talking about being able to do something with the fabrics that they have at home, being able to become creative enough to do whatever they can to help out either themselves or even healthcare workers best that they can. It's important that that kids feel useful, because so often kids are told, you can't do this, you're a kid. This is a time when kids are very useful.
Mhm.
It's important that you do put their minds at ease and let them know how important they really are.
We're just about at the end of our time here, and it's been a wonderful discussion with you, Allison. Do you have any final thoughts on if a parent is looking at their child and senses that they are really worrying a lot,
Mhm.
and they may in fact be anxious? And as you of course know, very often if you just flat out ask them, hey, are you anxious? Or
Right.
very often kids they're going to say, no, I'm fine, or they're just going to kind of shut down. Do you just have any final thoughts on how a parent might raise this issue? And of course, knowing that you have to modify it based upon the maturity and the age and stuff, but any just guidance on how best to raise the question with the child if you are noticing them looking anxious, nervous, worrying a lot. Any thoughts on that?
I think that a great way to do this, you're right, based on age is important. Um, I would encourage parents to talk to their kids when they see their kids at baseline. And what I mean by that is they're not excitable, they're not busy doing something else, their attention isn't directed somewhere else, they're not visibly anxious at that time, they're not angry or irritable, but where they're kind of calm. Maybe you're eating dinner, or you're just winding down at bedtime, whatever it might be, or just watching a TV show. I think with teenagers, it's actually easier, believe it or not, to talk to them about this sort of thing. And I would encourage that parents, when you do talk to your teens about it, that you bring it up in such a way that relates directly to them.
Mhm.
How does it relate directly to their lives? Hey, look, I know that you haven't been able to get together with Joey. That's really got to be hard, you know? Yeah. I text him all the time. Yeah. That's great. Okay. Are you okay just texting him? Are you feeling like, it's kind of a bummer you guys can't get together? Well, yeah, but we get it. We get it. We know we can't. Yeah. Well, what's that like for you not being able to do that? You know? Because you guys can't just go to McDonald's and hang out. You can't go to the movies and hang out. You can't have sleepovers. So, what's that like for you? And I would encourage you to tell your child that whatever it is that they're feeling is normal, is okay. For the younger kids, I would do it more when you're doing something active with them. Notice how they are, especially when you're playing a game with them. It must be hard for you not to be able to have, Mikey come over and play this game with you. I know you really like playing that game with him. Yeah, I do. I really miss it. He's really funny, but you're okay, Mom. And gee, thanks. I'm glad I'm okay. Um, but I would encourage that when you talk to a child about that you put it in their language and you put it um, in their world, which is why it's important to do it whether they're playing cars or trains or baby dolls or playing with their American Girl dolls. Do it when they're doing something like that. Talk to them then. And it doesn't have to be a long discussion. Don't make it long. Don't make it deep. It doesn't need to be, unless that's what they need, unless they come to you and say, I really need to talk to you about this.
Allison, so we are at the end of our time.
Okay.
I want to thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
I
You
heard
as well.
really practical things that, as I continue to talk to parents, I'll certainly be passing on. Just before we part, I want to mention to parents on our website. This video, the recording will eventually at some point be posted, both on our website as well as on Facebook. So if you want to view it later, review any of the advice given, you will find it there. Also on our website, you will also notice the text to tip line, particularly if you have adolescent children, teenagers. You're going to have kids who just don't want to talk to mom and dad, and they may not even be a good candidate for therapy. They may not really need something as involved as seeing a therapist. Sometimes they may just need to know that on one or two occasions during this really difficult time, there's somebody that they can objectively reach out to, or reach out to is objective. So don't forget the text to tip line. It's as it would imply, it's texting, and you use and I'll say it, but it's on our website. It's WT Help. You text that to 844-823-5323. And again, it's on the Warren Township Youth Services website if you need it. And the value of that is also by using our own code, we can track the kind of issues that our kids are dealing with. And that's valuable as well. So with that, Alison, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. I was glad I could do this, and I hope I'm able to help some people. And certainly, again, I would encourage that if your kids or you are struggling, reach out to a professional. We're here to help you. Mental health professionals are anxious to help you. No, I don't mean to use anxious. I apologize, but we're here to help, and we're willing to do whatever we can to see everybody through this crisis.
Yes, absolutely. We are eager to help. How about that?
That's a good one. I like that. Thank you.
Alison, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for joining us. Wish you all a wonderful weekend. Take care. Thank you. Thank you.